Disclaimer. The interview mentioned in this podcast was omitted for technical reasons. It will return in a later podcast. As the quest for knowledge continues to progress forward, we find ourselves still asking questions about human behavior, social technology, and the future of mankind. In a world devoid of such discussion, two Crowder College instructors have been chosen to podcast their views on current events, weird science, and pop culture. And now, broadcasting from Crowder College, this is Psych Out with Nathan and Jason.
Welcome to the world of tomorrow!
Welcome to episode 35 of Psych Out, your guide to psychology, pop culture, weird science, and anything that amuses us. I'm your host, Nathan Gandy, psychology instructor here at Crowder College. And you are, sir.
I am Jason Edgar.
Yes.
Speech instructor on campus, and we have a podcast.
We do. We have 35 of them, according to the number.
Wow.
That's more than 12.
We've had a whole summer in between.
We did.
The first one and the
And we are still, for those listeners who do follow us, number one on Podbean's educational.
Really? I was ready to ask you.
I believe we're still up there.
Ooh.
So good to us.
That means we have to do a good job.
Someone's going to click on this for the first time. That was number one? Oh my gosh.
And we're going to do a good job today because we're going to rapid fire our first two segments here.
We do. We have so many things to talk about on top of an awesome interview. So instead of getting too deep, there's so many topics. We're just, hey, go look these up if you want further detail, or send us emails. We'll talk more about them, or post on Facebook. So we're just going to go back and forth, and we kept finding articles and events over the weekend that interest us. So here's my first one. Jason, in 1994, an Ohio court declared Donald E. Miller Jr. dead. And he had been missing for a couple of years.
May he rest in peace.
He rest in peace. His wife, of course, you need to formalize death. That's a part of benefits and insurance.
Well, and
and like
death certificate, right?
Absolutely.
And I don't know if you're going to get to this or not, but I've seen in movies where you can't collect like a life insurance policy.
Absolutely right.
So
yes, you have to be officially declared dead for some financial assistance, certain contracts.
Yep.
So that was in 1994. And on Monday of last week, Donald E. Miller appeared in court to defend that he was not dead.
Whoa, 20 years later.
20 years later.
Talk about zombies.
Indeed. So basically, from what I gathered from the story, he had lost his job, was struggling with substance abuse, and he just sort of disappeared off the map. His wife didn't know what happened. He got declared dead. She remillered. Funny side fact, she also remarried a person whose last name was Miller, so she didn't have to change her last name.
There we go.
So that worked out.
There's a lot of Millers.
That's right. Miller's now 61, and basically he came back because he wants to re-enter society. He's 61, wants to reactivate his Social Security so he can apply for work and get certain benefits there. However, the court ruled based on I guess testimony and evidence that he still legally will be declared dead.
So the court said to this guy
who walked in the
"You're
court,
dead.
You are still legally dead." I believe the Judge Davis was the guy in attendance. He said, "I don't know where it leaves you, but you're still deceased as far as the law is concerned." And part of the problem is, and as a side note, I think him and his ex-wife are amicable, like they're friendly. So this wasn't. But his wife was serious about legally blocking this because if he's found alive, that may retroactively mess up those insurance payments, and she has to pay things back.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's no way a family could do that because you don't think about paying the insurance back when someone dies.
Well, yeah, she probably raked in a couple bucks, right?
So, the last quote from the judge is always a good one. He says, "Every time you think you've seen everything, something like this comes along."
Oh, really? Well,
so that's my first little bit of story coming back from the dead from at least a legal standpoint, Jason.
Whenever you were telling me this in the pre-show, I just kind of came and went. But now, just telling me, were you in Missouri whenever we, as Missouri, voted in Mel Carnahan? who was dead.
I don't remember if I was here, but I remember that story.
Yeah, well, there was like these pins. Like, I guess he died during the election year, and he won. He actually won.
He had the popular vote even after when he passed away.
And he was. This isn't like a coming back. Like this story was kind of the opposite.
Yes.
But we had pins that said, "I'm still with Mel," and like I was only in high school at the time. So even then I was like, I'm not with this guy. He's going to make terrible policies. But I remember maybe George Carlin said that would freak out a ton of other countries, right? If we elected a dead guy as president. Say what you want about America, they just elected a dead guy.
That's right.
But anyways, non-dead guy. This
4 more
guy,
years, Lincoln.
4 more years, Lincoln. This guy no longer, he's alive, but the courts say he's dead, right?
Yes. So he may be trying to appeal that, but for now, they told him, you have to leave, you're dead.
Well, I guess my story, there's really no connection, but I really wanted to talk a little bit about Banksy. And for the audience that doesn't know Banksy, I mean, I don't think this is necessarily a hipster genre anymore because he's very popular.
No, it's been around for a while.
He's like a street artist. He's not a graffiti person per se, and therein lies the definition. He's a street artist. And what he does, Nathan, is that he creates as slow and as time-consuming as he wants these sketches, right? Like, for example, the sketch probably behind me right now is going to be a sketch of like a badger, or what is this animal he drew? Never mind. Edit that part. But anyways, he'll go to the spot where he's going to put on this. He's going to sketch, and all he has to do is just put on the sketch, and he'll just do spray paint it, and it makes it. So a graffiti person has to make their design right there. Right. He makes his design like let's say a laboratory, and then comes out 5 seconds. He's done. Right.
Jason uses Breaking Bad language when he describes things like laboratory.
Meth lab. Well, anyways, so Banksy, he's from Europe, and he's doing a stay in New York throughout the month of October, meaning every day in October he's going to do a new piece. And I mean, let's face it, this isn't something that's sanctioned. Like, anybody can go like spray paint their name over it, or police can just whitewash it, or do whatever.
And in fact, it could be considered defacement of public
absolutely
property because it's guerrilla art.
And this guy's like, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he might be wanted for some sort of vandalism or things like that.
I believe so.
And we call him Banksy because he's one of these people that's like, he doesn't want to be in the limelight. He wants to be kind of like a shadowy figure.
Right.
All right, so there's the introduction. About the 10th day he's in New York, he goes into like the hoodiest of hoods and draws a picture. Let me just pull it up here.
We'll have it up here for viewers.
Yes. What is this animal, Nathan? I can't.
Looks like a badger to me.
A badger. I was wrong all along. Beaver! How about that?
Beaver. Yeah,
the second most destructive animal in the world next to the human. Well, anyways, he draws this...
Beaver. Justin Bieber.
Good Lord. Justin Bieber.
Yeah.
All right, so he draws this beaver, and we'll call him a thug, puts a piece of cardboard over it as soon as it happens. And he is now charging people $20 to see this Banksy in the hood. And so people
that's called entrepreneurial spirit.
Yes, entrepreneurship. So what do you think about that, Nathan?
I think that's pretty funny. Did you read his most recent exploit with the sketches he sold himself?
Nuh-uh.
He made some sketches and anonymously sold them in the park, so people didn't know they were buying from Banksy.
Oh, okay. That makes sense, yeah.
Only until after it was done. He claimed to be someone who found these or whatever.
Yeah. What about you, Nathan? What's our third story going into the...
I'm going to say they're both so depressing. All right, slightly less depressing story. I'll say the most depressing for my last one.
Buckle in, folks.
And again, this is one of those, there's a lot of debate in the education community, and Jason and I are part of that community, of what exactly a zero tolerance policy should be.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I mean, grammatically, it sounds like under no circumstance should there be any exception, regardless of defense of the practice.
And I'm going to tell you already, as the way that I lean politically, I'm already arguing like, well, come on, what about this particular one, right?
Yeah, not even politically. I can tell you scientifically, it's very difficult to talk in absolutes, like everyone or no one. It's like I just hate that term. Mm-hmm. Like I hate those words, everyone and no one, because there's always an exception.
People are different, yeah.
Right. And so I found this story. This was out of Massachusetts, but it's a great example of the debate. Basically, a high school girl named Erin Cox She was captain of the volleyball team, honor student, and she found out some other teens were drinking at an underage party. Hey, that happens. That's a whole different issue, but that's going on. So in finding that out, she volunteered to be a designated driver. She went to pick them up and take them home. Okay.
Yes.
They were picked up by the police. And the police, though, because again, underage drinking, they found this. Obviously, they investigated. The police corroborated her story. In fact, the police agreed that, yes, she was there as a public servant, basically said, I'm going to get you home safe. But the school saw that as, you have been associated with underage drinking, and we have a zero tolerance policy, so she was stripped of her position on the team. This was put as a part of her record and disciplinary review. And they even the family tried to put in a lawsuit to the district court saying, this has got to be an exception, but the court kicked it back saying it's out of their jurisdiction. It's a school policy.
Jeez.
And so maybe this is getting more national attention, like any story, maybe they'll feel pressure and they'll reevaluate the case. But it's one of those great examples where, again, you see both sides. The first side is the zero tolerance is we're hoping that it means if you are even thinking about this, from past experience that it will get you in trouble. But of course, this now current side, the example here is there are always unusual and interesting exceptions to any policy. And should this particular student be punished for what many are calling a Samaritan Act? And to the student's credit, and again, how much of this is her, how much of this news, but I'll give her credit. They asked her, okay, this happened to you, you got in trouble, you got kicked out of this thing. Would you do it again? And their answer was because they needed help. So, I mean, sometimes you have to take that stand for character versus law or reason. So, what do you think about that, Jason? You kind of told me earlier what you think about it in terms of your general feeling on zero tolerance, but...
Well, therein lies the problem with zero tolerance. There's clearly an issue where, yes, she's connected to alcohol, but she's a designated driver. And she says she would do it again. What if there's another student that's like, I don't want to be a designated driver because I'll get the zero tolerance policy? So I think the school is going to have even more repercussions with people being like, I'm not even going to designate a drive because I'm going to get in trouble. So this story infuriates me, Nathan.
Oh, okay. Well, you certainly will have no problem with my next story. So why don't you give us one, Jason? Actually, yours was a little funnier, and let's clean our palate here.
So funny, in fact. One of my friends in Fayetteville, Justin Sizemore, he actually thought I was joking about this whenever I posted it on PsychOut or on the PsychOut webpage, and you can go see it for right now and see that it's not a fake story. But Seattle police, this is in Seattle, Washington, one of two states that are, by January 1st, going to be selling marijuana at a recreational level.
Yes.
They're already doing sort of public service announcements to get the word out about the new rules. Because whenever you have a big rule change, people are still like, well, what about this? What about this? Right? Like going back to zero tolerance.
Yeah.
Like, so does that mean I could smoke in my car or smoke in public? Right. So, anyways, what these police officers in Seattle were doing at Hemp Fest, if you will, they must be building rope there. I'm not for sure.
Yes.
But anyways,
a lot of naval construction going on.
Kind of getting on the level of, let's say, the quote-unquote stoner or pothead, they put the newest rules about the marijuana laws on individual bag of Doritos. Making that hasty generalization that all stoners eat Doritos or Funyuns or corn nuts or something like that. And Nathan asked me what were some of the rules that were on it. First, do not smoke or drive while you're high, Because obviously, if it's legal to smoke marijuana, obviously it's not legal to be intoxicated while you're driving.
Absolutely. So good.
Also, you can't smoke it in public. Yeah. And it does say, they're even being a little catchy here, they do say that you can still listen to Dark Side of the Moon at a reasonable volume. So what they're saying is, in kind of their own tongue-in-cheek way, is that, you have this new law, be reasonable with your volume. So anyways, I really enjoyed this story so much that I posted it on the PsychOut wall. And I think it goes to show that, the police in these areas and maybe even the federal government are very serious about not only getting these marijuana states off the ground successfully, but, like we said in the past, we're going to have new states that can study these laws and things like that. And if I were at HempFest and I were to have gotten these Doritos with rules, I would be very appreciative of the police officers.
I think so. I mean, your posting and ultimately even today was the most I've heard about this story, and I think it's a great way to do public service announcements or in terms of this case, it's just educational announcements. Because yes, it's a bit of a joke, it's a bit of a wink to the cultural perception.
Sure.
But in situations like this, you go too heavy-handed one way or the other. I think you do miss the point, and I think a lot of individuals, even those who were pro-legalization, did recognize there was this gray area of, okay, what happens? Like, what can we and can we not do? I think most of us assume the same thing, that we would take the blueprint of alcohol and we would basically use that that same blueprint. All right, well, I got one more piece of current events, and unfortunately this was a very sad story, but I think it speaks to a lot of elements and themes that we've talked about over the last few weeks. And this is straight out of Missouri in a small town called Maryville.
Oh, I know Maryville.
You know
it's at Northwest Missouri State University is there, I believe.
Okay.
So, anyways.
Maryville High School is specifically home of the Spoof Hounds. I don't know who that is.
Spoof Hounds!
So,
the fighting Spoof Hounds.
That's just what a sign says on my article here. So the sad news, it goes like this. There was a mother and her family, her husband, their father passed away, was a doctor. So they moved to this town to kind of get a fresh start. The daughter, for whatever reasons, was partying with older students, an older athlete, so a group here we were talking about alcohol students again.
Yeah.
And it seemed that the students, either she got drunk, they got her drunk, you can argue the semantics there. But basically she was 14-year-old, and as was her 13-year-old, and the athletes videotaped her getting drunk and then videotaped themselves having sex, non-consensual sex. That's called rape, by the way. And so the evidence was there. The police department investigated. They found evidence implicating this is a 17-year-old student named Matthew Barnett, and charged him with sexual assault because, again, they had the evidence clear. They thought to film their act. But why is this a sad story? Well, for two reasons. One, the case was dropped by the prosecuting attorney. The attorney claimed that they did not have enough evidence to get a conviction. However, it should be noted that this athlete who was prosecuted or arrested but not prosecuted was the grandson of a former Missouri State representative. And so some people are wondering, did politics play a hand in that? But what I find more disturbing, and this actually is disturbing as it is the family ultimately had to move away from the town because, and Jason, you may have seen this too, a small town gets behind a certain persona or community. In this case, athletics is certainly a common in small Missouri towns.
The Spoof Hounds.
That their family received many threatening phone calls. They said the boys deserved apologies, even though they pled guilty to the police.
Jeez.
Okay, so this was not accusations, and they said not guilty. They all confessed on video to the police. They were harassed. They were given phone calls. The daughter who was raped attempted suicide. Thankfully did not succeed. And ultimately, the town's overall message was, yeah, they were acting reprehensible, but they weren't criminals. They shouldn't be tried. They have a future in front of them, the typical refrain that you see. So ultimately, this family had to move back to the home where their husband and father died. And as they moved back, their house in Maryville mysteriously burned down.
Oh, yeah.
So, not a happy story. Now, it looks like this athlete is in college and doing just fine, and just tweeted about hooking up with girls there, so that's nice.
Well, they talk about these kids have futures ahead of them. Well, I mean, what's their present say about them? Like, if they get away with this, they might continue the behavior at Northwest Missouri State or wherever they go.
So we're going to take a break here. When we come back, we will do some weird science, have a little bit more fun with it, and then we'll have a really awesome interview coming up. So please stick with us. We'll see you then.
Weird Shutdown. Welcome back to Weird Science. I mean, psych out. But you are experiencing weird science at this moment, and later later, Nathan, something that's really connected to science. We're going to be interviewing Russ Hopper, who is the executive director of our Merit Center on campus. And why is the Merit Center important, Nathan?
Science.
Yes, science. Well, it's also the most energy efficient building on campus.
Yeah.
So we'll talk to the landlord of that building.
I was going to call him our resident supervillain, but you make it sound better.
Resident supervillain. There we go. And now he's turning into a public speaker. Like, he wants to bring back Toastmasters. Did you know that?
Look at that.
So he's turning more and more into Lex Luthor every day.
Yes.
So anyways, Nathan here on Weird Science, we talk a little bit about the crazy science stuff that's going on, or lack thereof science.
Yeah, unfortunately, Weird Science is also grinding to a halt.
Yes. And we didn't talk about the government shutdown during the current events, but we are well into the government shutdown. In fact, 3 days from now away from the debt ceiling discussion. What I wanted to talk about was the idea that government shutdown bars researchers from Antarctica and freezes, pun intended, climate science. So here's the deal. We have non-essential people that are furloughed for the government shutdown, and this unfortunately includes a number of areas. NSA, military personnel, Center for Disease Control.
National Institute of Health.
The Institute of Health, absolutely. And now research that we've been doing like nonstop since the 70s.
That's what's crazy to me.
Yeah, so anyways, this guy named Sebastian Vivancos embarked on a journey of a lifetime. He went to Antarctica just to be told to go back.
Gosh. That ain't a short flight, folks.
Yes, absolutely. We're talking about Antarctica. Where was it saying that? Well, you could tell by the article head that we go to Antarctica to do all the climate science because they can take a look at all the snow and the snow melt and things like that.
Right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I've even seen it may have been during An Inconvenient Truth or maybe another documentary, but you can almost tell the year where we enacted the Clean Air Act because there's like a little bastion in the ice that's just nice and clean, and they envisioned that was the year that we created the Clean Air Act. But there was one specific thing that it was talking about. Where are those cool little penguins? I can't find it now because this darn thing is so small. But anyways, they've been studying these types of penguins that have unique biodiversity and unique mating habits. We've been studying them uniquely since the 1970s. And they even have like a connection to the climate science where if the penguins are doing a certain behavior, it means it's warmer or colder or whatever. And the other thing about these penguins is they do something different in comparison to the climate. And so if it's like a hot year or a cold year, the penguins will do something different and so on and so forth, right? And I keep saying the word uniquely because, well, it changes day by day, month by month, and even year by year.
Right.
Well, these penguin scientists have been told to go back home. And so for the first time since like the 1970s, we're not studying these all-important penguins.
So basically, they're living markers of what's happening in the climate.
Absolutely.
And so we've been using them to gauge, one of the many ways we gauge man-made climate change. But, as you said, they're deemed non-essential, which in itself speaks to me of a larger issue. I can't imagine anyone. I mean, I guess you can argue certain programs, but in terms of overall, I hate the term non-essential anyway, or like as if they weren't doing something. But that brings us to the larger science and the weird science issue of science being non-essential.
Sure, absolutely. And it was just like 2 weeks ago. It was only 2 weeks ago that we had told by a number of scientists that climate change has been caused by humans. That's not the weird science we're talking about today. But there was one other instance here that I wanted to talk about. I keep losing it. I always catch it whenever you're talking. They collect data on ocean chemistry and biology. So you're also talking about the specific, unique ocean situations. Oh, here's what I was going to say. There are essential people that are involved, but it's basically just the maintenance guys in the homes of the researchers. So there are people that are working, but it's like the custodians.
So basically, they're the upkeep. Same for like our zoo. You're keeping things alive, but not doing anything with the data.
It's like you're not firing the pooper scoopers, you're firing the people that are studying the animals that are pooping. So anyways, Nathan, I know that's definitely going to make you sad, science-y. right?
We've had a couple of weeks of sad signs thanks to the shutdown. So, well, I'm going to come back and give you maybe some happy signs, depending on those of you who maybe consume a bit too much alcohol. Going back to a previous discussion, for I wouldn't even say decades, for centuries, humans have tried to devise the best ways to cure a hangover.
Oh, yes.
You've imbibed too much alcohol.
What's yours, Nathan?
Mine is not getting drunk.
Yes.
I find that's probably the best way.
It's kind of like the whole abstinence.
Drink in moderation is how you don't have a hangover.
Well,
So,
I'll tell you.
Also, vomiting. I would say
Oh, yeah, getting the sickness out of your system, right?
That seems to be mine.
Back in my day, it was always drink like a liter of water or like a glass of water before you go to bed. I don't know if that worked or not. But, or here's another good one. Everyone's always like, yeah, just have Taco Bell at 3 a.m. That'll help. It'll suck up all that alcohol in your system. I mean, that's the reason why they're open for fourth meal, right?
Yes, right. Well, probably not officially, but unofficially.
Well, anyway,
maybe so.
What is the cure for a hangover?
Well, this was a study that's actually done in China, and they're attempting to replicate it here. Basically, Chinese scientists examined 57 beverages, from herbal teas to fizzy soft drinks. Basically, what would you drink to help stave off the signs and
more alcohol.
More alcohol. What they found was, by most reports and volunteers in the study, the answer was Sprite. Lemon lime soda.
Obey your hangover, Sprite.
And here's what they said. They said, when we drink, our livers release an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase, HDH, which ADH, excuse me, which breaks down the ethanol in alcohol into a chemical called I should have looked that up. Acetylene. Russ Hopper, why aren't you here to pronounce chemicals for me?
So anyways, this chemical.
Okay, so enters our livers, breaks down, enters our bloodstream. This is then broken down into another chemical with the name longer, aldehyde dehydrogenase, ALDH. Okay. While this is usually considered harmless, and it has been linked with some health benefits of alcohol, being exposed to more potent versions is what causes hangover symptoms. And many of you have heard that before. A little bit of drinking, like a glass of wine a night, actually may have some benefits.
Sure.
But the abundance of it is what's hurting and harming our organs. Drinking. But it says Sprite was amongst the drinks that sped up the ALDH process, causing the alcohol to be broken down more quickly, therefore reducing the hangover duration.
You heard it here, folks. Drink Sprite if you're hungover.
Full disclosure, we are not hired by Sprite to advertise.
Yeah. Well, Nathan, does that have any connection? You have those big words over there, but usually whenever you have a little tummy ache, Mom used to say or give you Sprite or something, and that was like the only time that, Mom would ever, force you to have a sugary drink. So you think that's kind of connected to it? It's
I wonder,
something in your stomach that just reacts well to Sprite or something.
Maybe so. I always got the Sprite and soda crackers or saltines when you're sick.
You mentioned long ingredients and stuff. I learned over the summer the ingredient that's in Mountain Dew, the brominated vegetable oil. It's illegal in every country except the United States, and we put it in Mountain Dew. And apparently it's like a flame retardant chemical. Have you heard of that before?
I have not.
It makes sense though, because I've
heard of taurine, which is bull urine.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's in a lot of energy drinks.
Yeah. Now you know why they call it Red Bull. But they get it out of the ox excrement, right? Right? Bull poop.
I don't want to talk about this anymore.
Gross. Well, anyways, don't drink that stuff. Drink a Sprite if you have some sort of hangover.
Now, our last weird science is actually something Jason and I both found at the same time, but not with each other. Like, we came across this article and both brought it to the table in our discussion of what would we talk about today. So, Jason, I'm going to let you lead us in with it, though, and I'm going to pull it up on my iPad as well.
I'll be the play-by-play guy here, and Nathan, since it's a psychology discussion, he'll commentate for us. But anyways, according to Psych Central, updated, yesterday, irregular bedtimes are tied to kids' behavioral problems.
Bum, bum, bum. Parents, put your kids to bed.
Okay, so what's the easy explanation for this, Nathan?
be easy.
Because, like, okay, so you let your kids stay up till 10:30, and then they kind of continue that in life, and by the time they're a teenager, like, that's the time.
Right. Here's what they seem to be doing, because let me be clear. This was, as Jason mentioned from the website, it's actually found in the journal Pediatrics. That's what the website was quoting. They study kids 3, 5, and 7. They ask parents about their sleep factors. And what's important to note before we continue is this is controlling for social differences, economic differences, different parents in the house. So they can adjust for those factors and still look for sleep schedules.
Sure.
And what they're saying is it's not about what time they're going to bed. It's about the same bedtime.
Oh, okay.
It's about consistency in that development. And a couple of things. First of all, when you have this is just for human beings, when you have a consistent sleep schedule, it's easier for you to fall asleep and wake up. Like,
sure.
You just tend to be more rested. If you're waiting, certain nights you're going to bed really late, and then on the weekends you're trying to catch up sleep, that messes up your routine. And that's probably, and again, I didn't do the study, but I'm guessing it's addressing the bigger issue of sleep, which is when we sleep, you're repairing the body and you're growing new brain cells. You're building the brain.
Ooh, yeah.
And guess what? In childhood is the most we ever sleep.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, the first 2 years of life, we sleep more than we ever will at any time of our life outside of death. And we do that because it seems to be the primo time to grow and build this brain, the things we've learned, the things we've discovered, and also just general functioning of the body. So it doesn't surprise me that you start having young kids, so right now their body is still in an explosive state of growth, and you're messing with their sleep routine. Well, their brain and their body is developing abnormally at this point. So we're starting talking about behavior abnormalities. Well, what is behavior? It's your brain activating action. So we're still ultimately talking about your brain, even though you say, I decided to do this. Well, your brain made that possible. So maybe you've slowed down development of parts of the brain that deal with self-control or attention or problem solving.
And
that's frontal lobe.
It says here that sleep deprivation affects developing brain. So there you go. And it also talks about my favorite term, the circadian rhythm. Right?
Yes.
There we go. Nathan is right. He did not do this. The study from researchers at University College London found that irregular bedtimes could disrupt natural body rhythms and cause sleep deprivation, undermining brain maturation. And they studied 10,000 children. So
take that. That's a good sample size, guys. So you parents, you're like, well, I'll let them stay up on the weekends. Realize that a stable bedtime is one of the keys for normal physical development. But the truth is, side note, that's the same for adults. Like, this doesn't stop in childhood. When we stay up too late, or as I chide my students, you think I'm going to bed at 2 or 3 every night, but I'm going to sleep 12 hours on the weekend, and that's going to adjust me.
Oh, yeah, I can't do that.
It will reset your clock, but you've lost that growing time, the development time, the brain time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's gone. You got to start over.
I did real quick, Nathan. I did an undergraduate paper back in my day, and I stumbled upon one interesting fact is that you can't catch up on your sleep because you only have 24 hours to garner that 8 or 9 hours.
Yes.
So if you don't sleep 8 hours in a 24-hour span, like you said, you cannot catch it up on the weekend. You just got to start all over and hope that you get 8 hours in the next 24 hours.
Right. That's kind of the joke of caffeine or other stimulants is, we say, well, I'm sleepy. I get coffee or soda. It wakes me up. Yes, technically it gives you the illusion of having more energy, but that's why you have that crash, is because once that caffeine wears off, your body's like, wait, I didn't get enough rest, and I'm out. So can't do this anymore.
Sleep, people.
Please do. Please do. Now, I'm about to have a kid, so that's about to be screwed up
for
a couple of months. So here on Psych Out, you'll see me acting differently. But we'll get to that when we get to that. So there's some weird science for you.
Much more fun than our current events.
Absolutely. And certainly leading us into a great discussion we're going to have with Russ Hopper, resident Lex Luthor, as we have now dubbed him. So stick around with us. When we come back, we'll hear all about the Merit Center, but also about the future of energy. So see you then.
See ya. Episode 35 of Psych Out is brought to you by the Merit Center Tours. Have you ever taken one, Nathan?
I have. What'd you think I'd say no?
I thought you were going to say yes, and it was very, and then go on for 2 or 3 sentences. But anyway,
You did not ask a question. You asked a yes or no question.
I need to stop asking those closing questions.
That's right.
During live reads. All right. Here on campus, we have the most energy-efficient building in the state of Missouri. And anybody can tour this building on the second Friday of every month.
That's you guys.
That's you guys. The tour guide is our featured guest today, Russell Hopper. And
Esquire.
And he'll show you the benefits of renewable energy, including wind, solar, and biofuels. And I bet if you ask him very nicely, he'll show you that solar car that Crowder has.
Maybe even that laser he's working on that he said he isn't, but we kind of think he is.
And he's always like, whenever we get him in that conversation, he's like, hey, what's that over there? And then
Right. He just puts a blanket on something and runs away.
So anyways, the second Friday of the month tours start at 2 o'clock. Just meet in the Merit Center lobby, the closest building to the big wind turbine.
Turbine.
That's how he says it, so that's how I'm going to say it. Or you could set up a tour with Merit Center Secretary Alice at Alice Heim at Crowder.edu. I'll spell her name for you. ALICEHEIM at Crowder.edu.
I like that one of the ways you can get a tour is by loitering.
Well, at 2 o'clock. Yeah. And have you ever been to one of their classrooms? They have these really cool seats that almost look like a Dr. Evil seat, where it's like, yes, because I've been over there to talk about the Science Expo. Seriously, it's like me and like 5 scientists, and I'm always like, what do you think,
That's
Dr.
right.
Stark?
They sometimes pass out cats for you to pet while you're talking. It's just...
Come, Mr. Bigglesworth. Well, anyways, the only thing I have left is a little tagline. So go green with the Merit Center.
That was it, huh?
That was it.
Okay.
Tours start at 2, the second Friday of every month. See you then.
See you at 2! Welcome back, listeners, and real quick, I just want to thank you, first of all, for being an active listener and participant in Psych Out. Some of you have been posting, have been commenting, have been emailing, and we appreciate that. For those of you new to Psych Out, there's so many ways you can contact or view this program. You can watch us on YouTube, as some of you are right now. You can catch us on Podbean. Our address is psych-out.podbean.com, and that's our podcast, also available on iTunes. Now, for all 3 of those, I do ask that those of you who participate, please rate our podcast. We love to hear feedback, but we also, when we get ratings and comments, we start appearing for those who have never seen us before. Currently, we're on Podbean's featured educational list, so that's a great way to link in there. But it doesn't have to stop with watching us. You can participate, as I mentioned, by posting on Facebook, contacting us on Twitter, using Instagram, all under the handle PsychOut66. So we're going to try to keep you abreast of new events, new activities, new posts, new guests, but we want to hear from you, and when you do comment, almost always appears on the podcast because you do the work for us, and we're a little bit lazy. Thanks so much for being a part of the show, those of you who have been in the past and will in the future. Once again, we are Psych Out at podbean.com, on iTunes, and on YouTube. What do you think, Jason? That's a lot of ways to get a hold of us.
Yes, and we're talking about Psych Out in the closing because the last part of Psych Out is us talking about Psych Out, talking about the shows we watch, what we did over the weekend,
and a little bit about ourselves.
Yeah, and Nathan, we didn't have it on the notes here, but we got to talk about next week's episode. We've been talking about this episode since probably even the early days of Psych Out.
It was on the pitch sheet of things we might talk about one day.
But we are going to have a LGBT discussion next week, and our featured guest is going to be Director of Theater Drew Feathers. And I don't know, just psychology or current events, maybe even some weird science behind the idea of lesbians, gays, transsexuals, and what's that be? Bisexuals?
Yes.
So there we go. I'm actually quite excited for that. Nathan's going to have a spirited interview with Drew, and that's next week. So anyways, and this will be our 4th week in a row with an interview, which, by the way, the Russ Hopper interview we just did, amazing.
Because he's science man.
So anyways, Nathan, I know what you did this weekend. We had a shower together.
You're not wrong, but it still took me a moment.
It was an hour and a half long too. No, you had you had a quick baby shower, right?
We did. In fact, several people from Crowder came and celebrated along with friends and family as well. So we were very thankful.
You know, I like my department chair, but I love Joan Wilson. You're so lucky to have her.
She is adorable.
She's great.
I don't know if I can say that on a podcast, but I just did.
That and Jamie Emery, right?
Jamie Emery, yes. Yeah. They came from my department. And, in fact, I got a lot of well wishes from the rest of my department.
Oh, absolutely,
and some gifts from them, so I do appreciate it. It was fun. Special thanks to our friends, the Barneses, because they actually put it on. They provided the food and decorated and gave all that fun stuff. We just had to sit there and eat and receive presents.
Yes.
So it's pretty easy.
And Nathan proclaimed at the middle of it, I hate baby showers.
That's right. I like people to know where I stand.
Well, you get presents and they have nothing connected to you. Like, I specifically gave Nathan diapers.
Right. No,
like, you're not going to be able to play.
And actually, I've been to a handful of baby showers in my day. This is certainly one of my more favorites, and not just because it was ours and we got stuff, but because it was friends chatting and hanging out doing things, which is always preferable to usually I'm like a friend of a friend who came.
Sure,
and I don't really know anybody, and I'm maybe the only male there or something.
But you saw all your friends in one place, right?
Yeah, so that was always nice. So thanks for everyone for coming, and thanks for your gift, Jason.
Yeah, and so
future dog sitter, Jason.
Yes, future dog sitter. I love your dogs; they're the best. Okay, so Ben Barnes, he's married to the woman that put it on,
yes,
right?
Tanya Barnes.
And Ben Barnes was our featured guest during the Not My Spirit Guide episode.
Yes.
And I wanted to bring up to the discussion a couple things about the Washington Redskins name change.
Absolutely, I almost brought that up in current events.
Well, real quickly, it's gaining steam. Last night, Bob Costas said something about how this name is offensive, which I tend to take that aback a little bit because Bob Costas has been saying that name for the past 20 years. Why all of a sudden is he saying that? But additionally, The Onion had the funniest article headline. Did you read it?
No, I didn't see that.
Okay, the Washington changes their name to the D.C. Redskins. Barring a name change, like I was like, that's perfect. But anyways, because that was a discussion in that podcast.
Yes.
It's a very interesting discussion.
And let's be honest, we're recording on Columbus Day. We didn't really say much about that.
We're going to save that for Mr. Z, right?
Yeah. We're going to definitely do a big Thanksgiving-based podcast. But the Redskin issues kind of came back, and the fact that Columbus Day itself is sort of a strange thing to talk about,
or at least to admire and
right. It's sort of a lot of interesting half histories there. But
he wasn't a very nice guy to our natives.
We're going to do our big history focus on Thanksgiving special, so that's going to be very exciting. So future 10 there.
Yes.
What else did we do? You saw a bunch of movies. You caught up on the movies I've been seeing.
I saw Gravity. You basically said everything last week. I enjoyed it. I didn't like it as much as Captain Phillips, but I think the reason why people are captivated by Gravity is because it's the first struggle that I've ever seen that's man versus space. Right?
Yeah,
you always have man versus nature. But
right.
Boy, all the obstacles that little technician / astronaut Sandra Bullock has to do to get back to Earth. And that's what I was telling Mandy. She hadn't seen it, and I was explaining to her. It's like, this person was not necessarily an astronaut. It's more of like they learned the basics of astrophysics or whatever, and then they shoot her up in there and it's like, hey, fix our satellite.
Right.
Well, then what happens whenever she has to do super astronaut-y stuff to get back to Earth, right?
And it's a great reminder that space itself, as amazing as it is not made for us.
Nope.
I mean, and so the slightest things that can go wrong just shows us how little and prepared we are to handle space, which in and of itself goes back to our weird science and the shutdown. I mean, that's one of NASA's goals, is to continually change and improve technologies to make that safer and easier to access for us.
I would say to the audience, go see it. If not once, me and Nathan both agree, you'll see it once and you'll never want to see it.
I will not pop that again with some popcorn.
And it reminded me of old Red Bull jumper, Brian Baumgartner, like him jumping from outer space, which is really kind of like opens the gateway to privatizing space travel.
Yeah.
But anyways, here on Earth, I went and watched Captain Phillips 2.
Based on a true story.
Absolutely. Great movie. I felt like the main Somali pirate guy did a really good job, and I heard they just plucked him out of a
he's got a lot of press and had no background.
Here's the problem with Captain Phillips movie, though. They give away way too much in the preview.
Right. I mean, it's a story that already exists, and then the previews hit the highlights of the story. So, there wasn't a lot of mystery.
Even to the point where they're on this barge, and you see Tom Hanks getting into the smaller craft with these guys, and it's like, I've seen all this. Now, once the Navy gets involved, you almost have this air of like, wow, I'm so glad the Navy and the Coast Guard is on my side, you know? Because like these Somali pirates, like they did not stand a chance from like the middle on. I never felt like the bad guys were going to win.
What did you think? Speaking of that, just to pick your brain at the end of the podcast. Because a lot of attention has been made that the movie tended to, and some would argue rightfully so, humanize the pirates, or more to say, help you understand the motives of why they would do this versus, like we even made the joke earlier of it's not pirates, haha, it's like that desperation.
I may have missed it because no reason, but I don't necessarily think it did. There was small parts that they said why. Like you never saw the Somali pirates like scouring for food. They just basically said, hey, that's a big ship. We want to take that ship. And so you make the connection that like, well, this ship has food aid to Africa and even food aid to Somalia. But, you know, therein lies, you know, that's about as far as they go. Okay. So ultimately, I really just felt like these guys were just hijacking a big ship. Okay. There really was no moral to it. So, but see it for yourself, Nathan, in the audience. And
sure.
Another thing before we get to our toys here is that we ushered in the return of Walking Dead.
Yes.
And diehard Walking Dead fans will know that this is the first season where Scott Gimple is the basic director and writer for the show.
The showrunner.
Yeah, it started off with Frank Darabont. He was the creator of Shawshank Redemption, and he left right around the time they got to the prison, which. I mean, I think that he'd be the best for that because he did Shawshank. But already, I really liked the first episode.
We haven't seen it. We're a day behind because we shower stuff. We didn't get to it.
A couple things. They're introducing new threats, and I think one of them is going to be more of like a flu type thing, where there's a new. I don't know this just yet, but there's a new way to turn into a zombie, where you could just get super sick and then you turn into a zombie. Your immune system.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, because it's a virus, obviously. Something enters your body.
Yeah, they brought no attention to it, but you see Rick looking at a zombie, and these zombies are looking fresher, and even more specifically, they're bleeding out of their eyes. So, and they don't talk about that in the comics either. And also, he's more of a farmer now, and you see like pigs that are kind of like getting sick and stuff. So
I gotcha.
There's that.
I did see at a New York Comic Con that, and I don't know who because I didn't read the article. 3 characters from the comics are coming to the show that haven't been announced yet, or they've been announced.
That'd be cool,
but they're not in yet. Like not Tyrese, but 3 new. Yeah, one is the redheaded dude with the mustache and a ghost.
Yeah, I think that might be Abraham.
Yeah, I don't.
They always like in the comics. There's always a big guy accompanying Rick. It's Shane is the first big guy, then Tyrese, then Abraham, and I'm not really sure who the big guy would be right now. It might be more of the skinnier Jesus guy. I'm getting way deep into the comics. The one guy I want to see that's in the comics in the movie, I want them to bring back the next villain, which is Negan. He's super. Just like every time he's in the comic book, it's like, oh my god, something bad's going to happen. But like I said, in the comics, they don't introduce like this new way to get the zombie virus, and so even there, if you've read the comics but haven't read or watched the show, there's going to be new stuff. There's going to be new stuff for everybody. I'm excited.
All right.
Last but not least, Nathan, boy, this has been a long podcast. Let's talk about our toys.
All right. Well, as listeners and watchers know, we're trying to make this set more decorative, more festive, so each week bring a little something from our house or office or whatever that just populates and we like. So I'll start with mine. They're little alien heads, but actually they are shakers, or shakerays as they're called. They're a percussive instrument.
Yeah.
There you go. That's not that impressive.
I gotta have more.
They're fun. Yeah, more cowbell. Could bring one. Didn't bring.
And why did you bring those shakers?
Because they look like alien heads.
Oh. Well, there we go.
And they've been on my percussion shelf for a while, but if you've been in my office, I have all this sort of African and or Asian drums, and then I have these plastic alien heads. I was like, I'm going to bring them up here.
Well, I don't really have a toy. I'm starting to just scrounge my office for things to bring because
I like it decorative.
There we go. So I brought something that it's sort of Crowder stuff, but also sort of swag stuff. I don't know if anyone ever hears the word swag. That's actually an acronym for stuff we all get.
Oh,
did you know that?
I don't think I knew.
So
I say it all the time.
Yeah. So, and it's free too, I believe, right? So, anyways, we had a speech tournament 2 weeks ago. Did I talk about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty sure. Well, anyways, we gave a cup to all the teams, and then we had some left over, and I didn't want to take them back.
Right. It's a reminder of a job well done.
Yes, a reminder of a job well done. An empty cup.
It's a metaphor there, too.
Well, there we go. We have just talked our little mouths off.
We have. Well, thanks so much for listening, guys, and watching. Next week, we'll have those issues and speaker that we talked about, and we even have more coming in through October.
Sure.
So we are lined up with some exciting stuff. So, Jason, sign us off.
Peace out, Girl Scout.
That's why I stopped doing that to begin with.
When the cavalry comes, we're looking for a reason to break down these walls and jump. When the cavalry comes, we're looking for a reason to show you the brave don't run. No, they don't run.
Today I started a new class and I had that awkward moment where I'm like, I have a podcast. Listen to it.